Some say it's a legend. Others claim they've seen it with their own eyes. But what you're about to hear, this is real. Story 1 by John Brewer. The question lingers in the dense forests of the Olympic Peninsula. Is Bigfoot real, or just a carefully crafted illusion? Renowned researcher Cliff Crook of Bothell has arrived at the Hoh tribal reservation, drawn by reports of massive footprints, snapped tree branches, and strange rhythmic pounding noises. Local resident Gene Sampson described the unsettling sound as "bam bam bam stop bam 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 stop." This was for sure Bigfoot, Crook claims. As co-editor of Bigfoot Trails Journal and a veteran tracker, he has no doubt that something massive and elusive is roaming these woods. He estimates that the creature stands 8 feet tall, covered in thick matted fur, and weighs at least 600 pounds. Yet how does something so enormous remain unseen in a world teeming with modern surveillance? Crook and other Bigfootologists believe it comes down to instincts. The creature is believed to be nocturnal, highly intelligent, and incredibly adept at avoiding humans. The dense forests of Olympic National Park are so impenetrable that some crashed planes have never been recovered. If entire aircraft can vanish, what about a flesh-and-blood phantom? Local tribal legends tell of the Seatics, a mysterious race of giant fur-covered beings who mimic the calls of birds and animals, luring unsuspecting hunters deeper into the woods. As recently as the 1920s, native communities refused to venture into certain areas without large groups of armed men, fearing the unseen watchers. Perhaps their fears were justified. Without Bigfoot, the peninsula is just another stretch of wilderness. But with it, it becomes a land of the unknown, where something massive, ancient, and unseen might be watching you from the trees. Story 2 by unknown author. You may have heard the whispers, a mysterious metal cylinder spotted on Bigfoot's arm in the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. Some claim it proves the creature is not of this world. An ape doesn't wear metal, argues Eric Beckjord of the Sasquatch Research Project, unless it's something else. Some might scoff, but I believe every word. I believe in the 1924 British Columbia story of a man kidnapped by a family of Sasquatches, escaping only by tricking them into chewing tobacco. I believe in the 1970 Wilsonville case, where a woman was flung over a fence by an unseen force. I believe in the 1974 Maple Valley account, where a man claimed to know of a hidden underground tunnel stretching from San Diego to Seattle, a highway for Bigfoot travel. And I certainly believe in the Bellevue, Washington report, where a creature lifted its head at an unnatural angle, opened its mouth, and let out a wail so mournful it made a grown man cry. What I don't believe are the so-called experts trying to debunk it all. People dismiss blood samples that turn out to be transmission fluid and cat blood. But who's to say a creature from beyond this world doesn't have strange synthetic blood? People call the 1924 Mount Street Helen's Bigfoot scare a hoax because an old man confessed to rolling rocks down a hill. But what if he was covering for something much worse? Bigfoot is watching, Bigfoot is waiting, and Bigfoot is real. Story 3 by Terry A. Smith, Idaho State Journal, July 18, 1980. It began with an unearthly scream. A woman living near Ferry Burns Road, 5 miles north of Fort Hall, awoke to strange, piercing cries just after 2:30 a.m. The sound was something between a woman wailing and a coyote's howl, but distorted, wrong, and too high-pitched to be either. Terrified, she called the police. Officers arrived to find grass and sagebrush trampled, but no footprints. Yet the air was thick with an overpowering stench, something like rotting flesh mixed with unwashed filth. Idaho State Police soon joined the search, but the wailing continued, now moving through the darkness. The officers were unnerved. It was an unearthly scream like an animal, but worse, one officer later reported. Nearby, horses thrashed wildly in their pens, reacting to something only they could see. The sound stopped suddenly, as if whatever had made it had realized it was being hunted. The officers found nothing but silence, and the lingering stench. This was the second report in 2 weeks of such sounds in the area, and each time no explanation was ever found. Story 4 by John Mosley, News, Paris, Texas, July 6, 1980. For over a decade, a secretive group has been tracking, studying, and gathering evidence of Bigfoot encounters. They call themselves BIRO, the Bigfoot Investigation and Research Organization. Unlike flashy TV hunters, BIRO operates silently, avoiding publicity to protect witnesses and evidence. Lead investigator Kenneth Shepard insists, "We don't assume anything. We let the evidence speak." Most cases involve massive, human-like footprints, often near creek beds and dense forests. But some reports hint at something stranger: disappearances, strange lights in the woods, and unexplained animal behavior. In June, BIRO investigators found 2 large footprints near a remote creek bed. They were weeks old, but still undeniable. Their work is far from over, and what they've found so far is enough to keep them searching. Story 5 by Michelle Martinez. Do big hairy primates roam East Texas? Other than humans, I mean. The audience shifts uncomfortably. The room is silent. Wildlife journalist Chester Moore Jr. steps forward. "I don't believe in Bigfoot," he begins, his voice calm. "But I have accepted that we have a hidden species of primate in North America." A collective exhale. The second annual Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson, Texas has gathered 200 believers and skeptics. The Texas Bigfoot Research Center, a volunteer-run organization based in Dallas, has been tracking strange encounters, unexplained sounds, and evidence of massive footprints. Some researchers, called cryptozoologists, claim Bigfoot is as real as the mountain gorilla or the coelacanth, animals once thought extinct but later proven to exist. Texas history even whispers its own tales, like the Wild Woman of the Navidad, a creature reported as far back as 1837. The Texas Bigfoot Research Center has over 100 documented eyewitness reports, many coming only after a news special aired in July. People who stayed silent for decades are finally speaking. They whisper about unsettling encounters deep in the forests, about trees bent at unnatural angles, about something enormous moving just out of sight. And some, the unlucky ones, have seen its eyes. Story 6 by Jay Zarzanecki, Burlington, Vermont, June 16, 1984. In the forests of Blackfoot Reservoir, something is leaving impossible footprints. A local farming family has been tracking them for weeks. One set, massive, at 16 inches long. Another, smaller but still unnatural. And then the third set, warped, misshapen, with 4 toes instead of 5. "Something is wrong with that one," the family whispers. "It isn't normal." Investigators from Project Bigfoot are cautious, but intrigued. "Not a bear," says Marcia Crane, an investigator from Seattle. "Too human, too strange." The Idaho Fish and Game Department dismisses it. A hoax, they say. Tracks made by an animal. But how does an animal walk upright for over a mile? How does it step carefully between patches of soft ground, as if it knows it's being followed? And why have the farm's dogs started disappearing? Story 7 by Richard Calloway, Mount Shasta Gazette. July 10, 1974. Mount Shasta, California. What was supposed to be a quiet family retreat in the dense forest of Mount Shasta turned into a night of terror when a family of 4 arrived at their rental cabin, only to find something was already inside. The Wilcox family, visiting from San Francisco, had rented the remote cabin for a week-long getaway in the woods. Isolated, miles from the nearest neighbor, the small rustic lodge sat among towering pines, with nothing but the wind and the distant call of wildlife to break the silence. But something else was out there, and it wasn't human. A strange arrival. The Wilcoxes, Robert, 38, Margaret, 36, and their children Danny, 12, and Lisa, 9, arrived at dusk, just as the sky turned a deep purple behind the mountains. They had expected the place to be empty, but as they pulled up the long, winding driveway, something felt wrong. The cabin looked lived in, Robert Wilcox later told local authorities. The porch light was flickering and the door was slightly open. I thought maybe the owners left in a hurry, but then I noticed the scratch marks on the doorframe. Inside, the air was heavy with an awful stench, something between rotting meat and wet fur. Then came the real horror, the unseen presence. As the family cautiously stepped inside, they saw the damage. Cabinets torn open, food missing. A chair overturned, deep scratches in the wood. The bedroom door shut tight, with deep gouges in the wood, as if something had tried to claw its way in. Or out. "The whole place felt wrong," Margaret later said. "Like we had just walked into someone else's home, but not a person. Something bigger." Then came the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving upstairs. Robert grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the staircase. The smell intensified. As he reached the top step, the floorboards creaked. And then something moved. Behind the slightly ajar closet door, something shifted. Before he could react, the door burst open, slamming against the wall. The Wilcoxes saw only a blur of motion, a massive, hairy figure rushing past them, knocking over a lamp as it thundered down the stairs. Margaret screamed. The children froze in horror. By the time Robert reached the bottom of the stairs, the front door was wide open, swinging in the night breeze. Outside, branches snapped in the darkness as the creature fled into the woods. The aftermath. The authorities arrived early the next morning, after the family spent a sleepless night locked inside their car, too afraid to go back in. Sheriff Henry Dawson, who has worked in the Mount Shasta area for 25 years, described what they found inside. "Something was definitely in there," Dawson said, "and whatever it was big." The bed upstairs was flattened. The frame splintered as if something enormous had laid on it. Near the front door, they found a set of footprints leading into the trees, each one nearly 18 inches long, deep in the soil. A large tuft of coarse, brownish-black hair was recovered from the broken closet door. Tests by local wildlife officials confirmed it did not match any known animal in the region. The Wilcoxes cut their vacation short, packing their bags and leaving Mount Shasta that very afternoon. "I don't know what that was," Robert Wilcox said, "but it was watching us before we got there, maybe even living there. And whatever it was, it didn't want us there." A growing legend. The Mount Shasta wilderness has long been associated with mysterious sightings, strange footprints, eerie howls in the night, and shadowy figures moving between the trees. Local stories tell of a creature that roams these mountains, a giant covered in thick fur, larger than any man, silent when it needs to be, but impossibly strong. Some call it Bigfoot. Others believe something even stranger is lurking in those woods. All the Wilcoxes know is this: something had been in that cabin before them, and on that night in July, it wasn't ready to leave. Story 8. A White Shadow in the Night, The Yeti of New York by Curtis Clark. Newtown, Connecticut, June 22, 1984. At 4 a.m., deep in the Lawrenceburg, New York wilderness, Fred Ronaudo awoke with a start. Something wasn't right. The night had been quiet, peaceful, until now. A lone guttural howl echoed through the trees. At first he thought it was a wolf, but then the sound changed. It was closer now, moving toward him. Then he heard it. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, something massive crunching through the underbrush. His breath caught in his throat as a tall, white shape emerged from the darkness. It was walking upright, like a man, but too large, too unnatural. It breathed heavily, as if exhausted or enraged. It was the size of a sheet of plywood, maybe 9 feet tall, Ronaudo later recalled. Then it saw him. The creature froze. Then it jumped. One massive leap, then 2 more, like it was startled, yet unafraid. Ronaudo didn't wait to see what would happen next. He lunged for his truck, slamming the door, heart pounding. From the window, he watched the thing retreat into the trees, fading into the night. In the morning, he went back. There in the snow, footprints, 15 inches long, 5 inches wide. He made plaster casts of the prints. He told his story. But the strangest part, this wasn't the first time something had been seen in these woods, and it wouldn't be the last. From shadowy forests to remote cabins, the sightings never stop. Unnatural howls, massive footprints, and eerie encounters fuel the mystery. Skeptics dismiss it, yet the reports keep coming. Something is out there, watching, waiting. Like and subscribe for more chilling encounters. Who knows, you might be next.